Anxiety has become a very much, in my opinion, an umbrella term, a throwaway term. I'm anxious, I have anxiety. But actually, what a lot of people have and experience are feelings of panic, fear, worry, feeling on edge. And a lot of people are like, oh, actually, it's just one of them. So it's dealing with the panic or dealing with the fear or dealing with being on edge or the nerves. For a lot of people who say they're anxious, it's not any of those. It's not anxiety. It's low self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's low self-worth, right? So it's getting specific on it.
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. During this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kamran Bedi, who is the author of the book, The Anxiety Antidote, How Awareness and Action Can Lead to Self-Control and Inner Peace. What a great title. Kamran is a life coach and specialises in anxiety and PTSD. He also trains and certifies other coaches. Kamran's toolbox includes neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, integral eye movement therapy, and he will be sharing some of his wisdom with us today. How are you today, Kamran?
I'm really good. How are you, Johnny?
I'm good. I'm really good. I was just
Good.
we were just talking after recording about your very regal backdrop.
My office at home, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful, mate. It really is.
Thank you.
And you've got this cracking lighting as well, which is
just
me
it's
look
the window, the light coming in.
I reckon off camera you've got all this great team around you.
Yeah, I've got a whole crew.
Yeah, I thought so. How's the day been?
Do you know what? Actually, it's been a really intense day. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm out and about seeing people across London, and there's people that I have seen, for years around different aspects of kind of mindset, personal issues that I deal with, strategy, like life, business coaching, and a few of them aren't in good places, with just lots of stuff that's kind of snowballed. So I've kind of been out doing emergency sessions. So I'm just being really honest with you, and I've felt that a bit myself because when you've been working with people for a long time and you've seen great success and you've seen things improve in business or even in their home life or even in their health, it's really good. And you go in and out of their life. But then, as with everyone, and this is the thing with everyone, life happens, right? So things happen and it's just helping them process that. And so yeah, it's been a bit busier and working around some kind of deeper emotional kind of things, and it's not great to see some people, who in some ways when you work with people for a long time, they kind of see you as a friend as well, like seeing people or any person in a low place. So it's been busy. The day has been busy, but it's all good.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that those people are going through that, but at the same token, I'm sure you manage yourself brilliantly with all the toolbox you have.
Try to,
but
yes.
they're in really good hands. That's good to know that you're there for them.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do is what you can do. One of the reasons I was so sort of keen to talk to you was your very realistic approach towards self-development, personal growth. A lot of the time, we have these ambitions, we have these drivers, these things that we want to do, and we can do them. But exactly as you just said, life happens.
It does.
And it's that expectation, it's those assumptions, it's not being prepared for the inevitable obstacles because we don't want them to be true. And that's okay. Yeah. We don't want them to be true. We don't, but it doesn't mean they're not going to happen. And if you're not prepared for them, then it's even more difficult than it should be sometimes, I think. So I really do like the way that you approach things. Like at no point are you saying, let's get rid of the problem. You use the word manage. And I think that's
and that's life. We have to learn how to manage. And then I think you're completely right there. Like a lot of people have the concept that they want life to be perfect, or they want life to be easy, or they want to manifest like things into existence and life's going to be magical. Life can be magical, but we have those moments, and that's the purpose of life as well, in some ways, to feel, to experience, and to grow through those things. And that's something I've had to experience myself through my lifetime, like to go through things and grow through those things. And a counselor I worked with a few years ago, when I went to her, she said a lot of people get stuck in their pain or in their problem. And she said, and you've come to me, and she said, and you're not processing. And I said, and I was ready to hear this because I was like, help, I was like, help me. And she said, you're not processing. And she said, so I'm going to help you to process. I was like, let's do it. But it was that really resonated with me, because the people that come to me and the people I work with, they're doing the work. So they are processing, they're working through. But she said to me, she said, a lot of people stay stuck and they don't realize it. They don't know it. They're stuck in their pain or in their problem, and life goes by and the years go by. And, what can happen, and this is where I've seen people who have come to me, is that, when they finally get to that point where I feel people don't need to wait that long, but people come to me and they're like, oh, I've suffered for 20 years, or 10 years. And they're like, and that's affected my partner, but he or she has kind of dealt with it, or we haven't traveled as a family, or we haven't done, and I'm like, the work could be weeks or months, and this poor person, and there's so many people like this, they suffer for so long, and you don't need to. You don't need to. You have to manage it. You have to learn how to manage it. You have to process it. And today, more than ever, there's so much we can do.
Do you know what? That's music to my ears. Thank you for sharing that, because you're right. You are right.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to eradicate the problem or avoid the problem. I had a struggle with addiction for many years because I was unwilling or unable to experience complicated and challenging emotions. But I didn't know that.
Exactly. And that is the truth. Like, a lot of the time you don't know. You don't know. And the problem with that is, when you don't know, you also don't know a lot of the time how it starts to affect your life and your relationships and the people around you. And you're just trying to push it away or repress it or get through it or use the thing, right? And that is such a key thing. You don't know. But you can know. And that's the thing. And it's all about awareness. It's all about awareness.
Absolutely agree.
And I think, and I get this impression with yourself and, some of the people that we know and people that we have in common, like, once you're in it, you're in it. It's like, I want to do the work, and I'm going to do the work again and again, and the business and the life and the mental health and the damage. Like, once you're in it, it's like you discover, oh my God, I can manage my life. And it's like, more, what can I learn? It's the whole self-development. Like, how can I continue to develop? Because it's continual.
It is absolutely continual. It's a bit like where a long time ago I was a PT. And people used to say to me all the time after, I don't know, 9 months or so, Johnny, when does it get easier? I said, well, if I'm doing my job right, it never will.
Exactly.
Because the more you learn and the more you develop, the more you're capable of. The more you're capable of, the more you step out your comfort zone. The more you step out your comfort zone, the more the challenges come and they change and they evolve. And you have to change and evolve with it. Now, you might not want to. And that is a struggle within itself. But at some point, you're going to have the same problem keep coming up. And each time it happens and you ignore it, it magnifies and it gets bigger until it's so big. And it's the same problem, but just on a bigger scale. It's so big that you have to pay attention to it.
And
exactly. You think, how did I get here? But it's because you ignored the small little times it happened before that. So it sounds like we're very aligned on that. So go ahead.
No, I think it's exactly like you said. Now, being in kind of this position, and this for me, work in progress is like over 10 years. So not even professional. It's like the personal stuff is probably 15. Like, I started all this for me. And so, like, that work in progress, it's still happening. It's continual. But now the key thing is, I'm like, I notice the small signs. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I need to do that. And I know other people that are like that. And it's the small signs to catch it, to manage it. Whereas I know in the early days, and for a lot of people in the position they're in, exactly like you just said, they're going to notice it when it's so big and it's so much harder to handle, but still you've got to do the work. But now you catch it earlier.
I have so many little red flags for me. One of them is if I'm around people and they're eating and it starts to irritate me. That's when I know, right? Okay, something's happening. I need to go to bed early or something.
Exactly that, because I feel that, and it's not them. It's never them.
They've always done it. It's just
let them enjoy their food. Let them
it.
munch. It's not them. It's always, what is this? Like, and it's exactly that, checking in.
It's them little signs that I'd be aware of it, and I'm, and I used to have this sort of like ethos of, oh, I must do more. And what I've come to realize, and that battle that I've had, that sort of negotiation with myself, is actually I need to do less. And I've got to a point recently where I've been doing a lot for a long time, and the cracks were appearing a little while ago, but I kept thinking, oh, if I can just get to that, and I kept kicking it down the road. And now I've realized that, and I've done it this week. You're pretty much, you and a few masterclasses is about all I've got on this week. And there's been this like battle, this guilt, this sort of, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And then I'm like, no. And this is what I've learned, is not to ignore that. Like, that is how I feel. I feel like I should be doing it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk to myself and say, hey, listen, I know you feel like that, but you said yourself you're gonna have a break. There's a reason for that, and you might start to feel a bit better now, but if you carry on going as you were, you're gonna end up really, getting ill or whatever. So everyone's got their things, right? Everyone's working on something.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true.
So before we go too far, which I think we've already done about 10 minutes, but before we get too far into it, could you tell people that may not have come across you yet just a bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Yeah, so I guess my journey, I found self-development through self-help books many years ago. And I just suddenly felt like a light had switched on in my life. It was almost like I started to access the toolbox that I didn't know I could use. And that's why I love self-help books, self-development books, anything, that's kind of changed how it appears in the bookcase now, like smart thinking and things like that. All of that stuff is so easily accessible, it's affordable, and you have to be accountable because you're reading it and you have to apply it. And that started to very quickly change how I started to see the world around me, because I used to see it in a very negative place, and I used to see people and things and situations as like life was hard, and it literally flipped the switch, like the way that my mind started to think and operate, the way that I started to see the world around me and experience it changed and leveled up like I couldn't even believe. And I wanted more of that. And I think what it did, it was nourishing me. It was feeding me. It was nourishing me mentally, emotionally, and very, very spiritually back then. So everything that I did, all the trainings I did, all the learnings, it was for me. I was that student that was there not for a career. And I was like, I'm here for me. Like, I'm here to learn. And then it naturally became a career. And yeah, so I combine lots of different elements. I'm always still working on myself. Like yourself, I'm trying to keep a work-life balance. I'm talking and managing myself, or my mindset, my marriage, my life, whatever, like, because you have to. But I would honestly say that everything I have learned from those years has made my life a lot easier.
Yeah, that is what you're trying to do. You're not trying to, like, I was lucky enough to speak at the Latitude Festival this weekend.
Yeah.
And one of the things I said is, it was this perfect person that everybody is talking about and trying to be like, are they here? Can they stand up? Because they don't exist, but we all measure ourselves to this perfection that is impossible to achieve. But and we know that. We know that. Our rational mind knows that. But yet we're still trying to dress a certain way, we're still trying to present ourselves on social a certain way, and we're all guilty of it.
It's true.
At certain times, and all it's doing is sort of, we know we're setting ourselves up for failure in a way, or at least some sort of uncomfortableness, Yeah, I could hear that building going on now.
Oh no, sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, listen, this is what I love about this podcast, is that we deal with it. We deal with the postman knocking, we deal with dogs barking, we deal with it all.
That's true.
We get on with it. This is life, So that's how you become a coach. You went through the work yourself, and you went on your own journey. But I'm curious, like, as all coaches, we all have these sort of origin stories and things that have happened to us that have really brought it all together. But what's one of the most difficult things that you think you've experienced in your life?
There's a few. Thinking about this, I think there's a few, and actually one that I really want to share and dig into was a more recent one that I think people will relate to. And that basically I had to end a friendship.
Mm.
And this was on the back of, and I had to really check in with myself because I was grieving because I lost my mother a couple of years ago. And on the back of that, the friend that I thought was like my friend, like I got the reality. And I thought my sadness and I thought my pain was my grief. And actually, some space and time, I was like, and in the work I'd done with the counselor, I was like, oh, wow, like I have gone through acceptance, that stage. And, it gets easy. It never really leaves you. But I was like, but hang on, what I'm feeling now isn't the grief, it's the friendship. And it was the space that I had from the friend. And I had to put a boundary in where I had to just end it. And it's because I tried to help this person, not as a coach, not as a professional, just as a friend. But I repeatedly helped them year after year after year. And I wanted to share that with you because it was difficult. It was a long-term friendship. And, as a professional, I'm here to help people. So yeah, I'm going to help my friends and family and things like that. But I had helped and helped and helped. And we had so many good times. And I helped and helped and helped. And things were great. And it helped. But then that person started to negatively hurt other people. And
Right.
that's where I started to see it in a different way, and then started to negatively hurt me. And when it was others or myself, I had a break from it, and I started to see it was like, hang on, there's no boundary here. This person and their problem is escalating so much. It's affecting my life. It's affecting innocent people. I was like, and I've really tried. So I had to end the friendship.
Wow, that is difficult.
Uh,
I've had
and it was really difficult.
I've had something similar when I went sober. There was a few friendships that no longer aligned with me
Right.
being sober,
Exactly.
and
Right.
and that was tricky. But I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that, and
Mm,
secondly, I'm very sorry to hear about your mother.
mm, mm,
But that sounds like a very layered situation, and
mm.
I'm wondering, like, ultimately, if you were to sort of put it in some sort of statement, what do you feel that you learned from that experience?
That I needed to protect my own well-being because this person was in the back of my mind all the time. I didn't realize it. I guess it's like, if you've got a child or a partner or a sick person that you're constantly worried about. And I've had that in my life, like constantly worrying about. I was like, why am I worrying about this person when their behavior is not showing the word, like matching the words, and the behavior is really negative? And the reason I wanted to say that to you today is because I know for a lot of people that ending a friendship or putting boundaries in around people isn't easy. And a lot of the time, you sacrifice your own mental and emotional well-being to try and support someone who's in a difficult place and space. But actually, even if it's just a break, you can find some relief. And I think that was my big learning. But unfortunately, in this case, it needed to be longer than a break, right? And that's why I wanted to share. That was my learning. But I know for people, there are a lot of people out there that care for people, that love people, that support people. But if it's detrimental to your mental and emotional health, take a break. If you can, take a break, put some boundaries in, because you have to respect and care for yourself.
That is so profoundly important.
Yeah.
It really is. Thank you so much for saying that. It's so
Mm.
profoundly important. And another aspect of it that I'd like to sort of explore is how easy it is to misinterpret or misread an emotion.
Yes.
I found it fascinating when you said that
Mm.
you sort of
Mm.
thought that pain
Yeah.
was your grief,
Yeah.
and that's interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's of course, but if you don't know, you don't know. So you
Yeah.
misinterpret that grief, and I imagine that was it through a counseling process
Yes.
of analysis. But how
Mm.
would somebody? What were sort of like the markers or the things
Mm.
you felt you had to do to really identify what the correct emotion was, so that you knew what action to take next?
So the reason, and I'm so glad you asked that. The reason I got the clarity was because a natural break happened in the friendship,
Right.
a natural break. And in that space, it was like a weight had lifted,
Mm.
and the weight had lifted, and I suddenly felt happier with the space and freer. And then I was like, oh, my kind of, in this period of my life, constant daily level of sadness isn't around my loss, it's around this problem that's here. And it was the space that showed me that. Because as many people know, grief is a long journey, and it's something that was the counsellor said people get stuck in. And I was naturally progressing through it, and she was helping me through it. And you don't rush it, you just process and you speak about where you're feeling and what you're doing. And she did say to me, she said, and I didn't tell her I was a coach, and I didn't tell her I was in self-development, but she said, you are quite different working with, and because it was one of the later sessions and we'd done a lot. And she said, how are you today? And I said, the fact that you just asked me that, there's a word in my mouth that I would not have thought I was going to say today. And I said, and that word is acceptance. And she said, oh, and in my grief, I purposely chose not to read on grief, not to look it up. I just wanted to live it. I just wanted to go through it, because I was like, I'm not going to like put a time and date on this, whatever. I didn't know any of the stages, but I just said to her, this word that is like wants to come out of my mouth is acceptance. And she said, because you're there. And I'd got there. And because I'd got to the acceptance, so there's a lot of healing that happened internally, mentally, emotionally for me. I guess then I was able to process the reality of this other area of my life through that space. And it was that space that gave me so much freedom. And even a lot of people were like, oh, you're a lot happier. Like, what's going on in a positive way? Because the people knew what's going on with me. They're like, oh, you're a lot happier. And I was like, yeah, the penny's dropped. I was like, unfortunately, penny has dropped. And that's how I learned from it. I would say, if you can, if a person is struggling like, if you can get some space, see how the space makes you feel about the situation or the person, because that might lead you to your answer.
Another great thing you've said there. First of all, sometimes you can only recognize something from the absence of it. From it going away, you're then able to go, okay, this is gone and I feel different. What does that mean? But the other part to it is actually taking the time to not have any more external influences. Like, that's so important. And I relearn that often. It's like you have those people that are constantly asking other people what they think about their problem. And what they're doing in that moment is they're clouding their judgment. They think they're getting more information, but all they're doing is becoming further confused because they're asking for more opinions based off of other people's value systems and their beliefs.
Absolutely. Because it's like an overload. Sometimes it helps to get other people's opinions and to talk things through, but it can be an overload. And then you're like even more confused. But actually, if you sit with it yourself, if you look at it yourself and ask yourself, you'll get your answer.
Yeah, and that's it. And another thing you said there was about not rushing it. The answer's not just going to come to you suddenly. You need a state of calm. You need a bit of time to go by so that you can properly process and go through the stages and notice what you notice. You know, if you've got an absence, you have to live it. I think you're absolutely right. Wow, that's a lot of wisdom dropped in there. I think if for everyone that's listening, re-listen to that.
But do you know what, Johnny? I don't think I would have been able to even say that even months ago. Like I'm that's where I am. That's my reality. That's my truth. And it's still an everyday process to some degree. It's lighter than it was. Time has helped, but the process has helped. And actually going through the process and moving through it, exactly like that professional said to me, not staying stuck in it. Because when you stay stuck, that's when your behavior changes. That's when you choose an outlet. That's when you choose a substance or an outlet that's going to try and numb it. That's really what happens. Or you express, you get angry, you get frustrated, things like that. And so, that's when I realized, okay, hang on, I need some help here. But, I probably wouldn't have been able to speak about that a while back. But again, this shows for me, sharing it with you, that healing has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's further evidence that you are always on a journey. That dangerous state of mind. I'm all fixed. It's like, oh dear. Oh dear. There's a question, I know, if you're driving along right now and you're listening to this podcast, I know there's a question on everybody's lips, and that is, how do you process? What do you mean by that? How do you process something?
Yeah, so processing is, and there'll be different ways of doing it from different practices, but I guess you've got to talk it through. And we do things differently. We think things through internally, right? So we'll see the thoughts in our head, the pictures we see, the inner sounds we hear, but that's not really processing it because it's internal. And we'll talk it through sometimes with friends. But when you have that person, which is the professional, who won't empathize like in a kind of way that is just going to tell you what you want to hear, that's
Yeah.
not going to challenge you, that's not going to make you look at, the things that you need to be exposed to. When you've got that safe space with the right person to talk, to acknowledge, to understand, that's processing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that awkwardness, I've
Mm,
been through my counseling training, and
mm,
that awkward sat pause, waiting for that person to speak, that
mm.
anxiety that comes with that means that you're going to start saying words and you're not going to be entirely sure what those words mean. But as you hear them, as you hear
Yeah,
yourself say things, that's
that,
when you realize, that's when you go, I didn't know I felt like
that
that.
is it.
Yeah.
No, that is so golden. What you've just said is when you hear yourself saying it, because you hear it differently with
Do.
a professional, with a stranger. It's different to a friend. It's different to a family member. That when you sit in that space, and that's the thing, it isn't that bullshit. You know what that space is for. You've got to get real. You've
Yeah.
got to get real. You've got to look at the issue. You've got to talk about the issue. But the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that people I see regularly. It's like they open the screen and we see them like, so let's go. And it's like they're not at that point where they're like, okay, so I think I should start here. They're like, so this is it. And that's the thing, because it gets easier to process, easier to talk, and your health improves, your emotions improve, your relationship improves, all aspects of your life improve.
They do. And like I said, that anxiety, that awkwardness, that drives that behavior to explore, to look and be curious. Because it's like when I'm sat in sessions and I ask someone a question, I will leave that silence there, and it can feel
Mm.
awkward and it can feel intense and it can feel like somebody needs to speak, but it's
Yeah.
not going to be me.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that person to go, I don't know what to say. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and even at that point, I'm not going to speak because this is part of the process. Like, I don't know what to say. Well, maybe I feel this about it. Maybe I feel, actually, wait a minute, I don't feel that because of it. And then the processing starts. And it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to watch. And it is awkward. It does feel awkward, but
Yeah.
that's why we're trained to sit in it, right?
There we go.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, when it comes to like change, yeah, so
Mm.
we work in an industry where we're helping people change, taking them
Yeah.
from where they are to where they want to be. And what typically stands between where someone is now and the change that they want to see?
Okay, let's be really honest, because you like that. And the more I do this is the thing that stops people getting the results that they want. It's themselves and the excuses that they make.
Love it. What a great
It's
answer.
themselves and the excuses that they make. And that can go into different aspects of like, oh, I don't have the time. You have the time. I don't have the money, and I understand that, especially in the climate that we're in. But and this isn't an insult, but if you look at some of the things like the money you spent on coffee or your phone or your clothes or alcohol, or like it's about prioritizing finances. And today more than ever, there's different levels of professionals and options, right? So I think for a lot of people, the psychology of money, for paying for a service that's going to help their mind and emotions, some people really, really struggle with that.
Yeah.
And what that does, the cost of the session, the actual cost of the impact on your life is greater.
Yeah.
The cost on your life and your mind and your emotions and any is greater. And that's a sad thing. And I think that is what gets in people's way, their mindset around time and money.
And priorities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think I want to tack something on the end of that as well, which
Mm.
I think you're sort of all three encapsulate, and that is honesty.
Yeah,
Is that being honest with yourself, because we all have egos, all of us.
yeah,
And egos
mm.
aren't good or bad. They're
Yeah,
there in essence to protect us. But what they do sometimes is they gravitate towards what feels good, and what feels good's not always good for us.
exactly.
And I
Yeah,
think sometimes it's really difficult to
yeah,
admit something that you don't want to be true to yourself, and that's
it
where that
is.
awkwardness comes in.
It is. And in one of my books, I've written somewhere, because I feel like this is the case for most people, that you wouldn't drive around with a flat tire.
Mm,
You wouldn't. And you
no,
definitely wouldn't drive around with two.
no.
But when you become that flat tire and you're struggling on a daily basis, you can't function. It
No.
won't get you very far. But people will fix the tire immediately. You need to have the same approach towards yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had a client the other day. He was ill for a week,
Right.
and he cancelled his session, and then the next week he came back, and he was in a particularly chipper mood. And I said to him, "Wow," I said, "You seem really upbeat. What's going on? Talk to me." And he's like, "Do you know what I've realized?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "I was ill last week." He goes, I was in a really bad way." He said, "But what it helped me realize was how good I normally feel." And he
Oh,
said, but it took me
wow.
to be ill for me to realize. I always thought I felt like crap all the time. But he goes,
Oh,
last week
wow.
I felt like crap. And he
Oh,
said,
well, that's a
and
good
yeah.
measurement.
And he's like, I would have done anything to have felt that how I do normally. And I
Yeah.
was just like, yeah, you see, I think that we up the ante on ourselves far too much. And we compare on social and we do all these different
Yeah.
things. But actually, the way we walk around, we're actually doing all right most of the time, you know?
Yes, we are. And I've said this before because I said this to kind of someone else I spoke to, because I had this moment at this time, which was really, really kind of clear to me. I was walking down my street and I was like, I feel normal. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm not high. I'm not low. I'm not depressed. I'm not excited. I am normal. And it's so nice.
Love that.
And because we feel everything needs to be on show or everything needs to be amazing, or oh God, we're really stressed, we're really anxious. No, there are so many normal times. Normal is good. Normal
Yeah.
is there. Like, but it's becoming aware of that. And that's a sad thing, like actually becoming aware that normal times exist. You've got exactly like that guy, you've got to notice it, you've got to acknowledge it,
Mm, yeah,
make it
absolutely.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like we seem to measure ourselves on extremes. We want to be
Yes.
happy all the time, or if
Yep.
we feel a little bit unhappy, we're depressed. Well, actually, we're
Yeah.
not. We're just.
We're not.
It's like
Yeah.
people, like my son the other day. He was telling me
Mm.
it was like he had some sort of chronic illness because he was bored, and I was
No.
just like, yeah. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? He's like, I don't know. Can we go here? Can we go there? I said, no. What are you going to do about it? Come on, go and find something to do. Go and find something to do. And before I know it, he was playing like he was 5 years younger. It
There we
was like,
go.
and it was really lovely. Like curiosity started. He started exploring. He did cause a lot of problems because he did break a few things and destroy a few things in the house. But I did ask him
Yeah,
to go and explore, so
you
I
did.
kind of deserved that. Yeah. But we move on to the bigger things. Things like anxiety and stress. They're
Mm.
huge. You already alluded to it. They're huge, big problems in today's world. I mean, they always have been, but today I think with AI on the horizon
Yeah.
and wars and social
Mm.
media and all of the different things that are going on, that the things with money, the things with digital currency, or loads of
Mm.
it. It's all out there, and we can all go down the rabbit hole and worry. But I mean, how do you help people manage? And I love that word, you've used it a few times now, manage their stress and anxiety. What sort of things do you do to help them or teach
So,
them what to treat them more?
if a person's working with me, because that's the thing, it's like the books and the kind of the group stuff and the public speaking around this topic, it's quite generalized. But if it's more one-to-one, it's always very specific. So where is the anxiety in their life? What's it in relation to? So you're looking at how they experience it, how often they experience it. And my go-to process is to treat the feelings and emotions that trigger it. Um, Anxiety has become a very much, in my opinion, an umbrella term, a throwaway term. I'm anxious, I have anxiety. But actually, what a lot of people have and experience are feelings of panic, fear, worry, feeling on edge. And a lot of people are like, oh, actually, it's just one of them. So
Mm,
it's dealing with the panic or dealing with the fear or dealing with being on edge or the nerves. For a lot of people who say they're anxious, it's not any of those. It's not anxiety. It's low self-confidence.
yeah.
It's low self-worth, right? So it's getting specific on it. And the way that I deal with it and the way that I really help people is through integral eye movement therapy.
Nice. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's my go-to process. I've used it for years. I'm heavily experienced in it, and it's helping people release the feelings that get triggered in the present moment, which cause the anxiety. So people who feel a lot of panic about something, every person I've seen that panic goes back to different experiences in their life. And within those experiences, the feeling is layered of panic through those experiences. So if the person is presently panicking about something unconsciously, like a train effect, they're feeding into all of the panic they've felt. So the eye movement goes back to the original, and you do the process, you move the eyes, you work on the process, and it reduces the overwhelm of the feeling down.
Wow.
So that the panic a person feels in the present moment is a lot less, or for most people, it's non-existent. It's a very, very rapid process. So it's about working through the timeline of experiences. And for a lot of people, they don't have a timeline, they don't present it, but the questions go into the unconscious and the unconscious mind shows them. Because for some people, it can go back to childhood, it can go to teen years, it can go to university years, go to any adult life. I've even had people that have gone back to memories of being in the cot that young.
Wow.
And they're in their 50s and they don't, but there's a slight memory and it's the feeling. So we work with the feeling, we do the process, and then it reduces it down. That's my go-to for a process.
That's really interesting because there's a few things in there. It seems to me that it's important to understand that it's a learned process and
Yes,
that it's
100%.
been layered over time.
100%.
And there has to be a willingness to analyze that, observe it, explore it in some
Yes.
way, to a degree.
Yeah.
And also make me think, I say it quite often to clients, it's like irrational behavior to an irrational situation is actually quite rational. It's like sometimes we're anxious and that is the right
Yeah.
emotion.
Absolutely. And exactly. And it's healthy to be anxious in that
Yeah,
emotion,
yeah,
and that your nervous system is producing that response because you need that to be able to deal with it.
yeah,
But it's where it's constant and
yeah.
daily, that's where it needs work doing. And the way that you have described it is exactly the way that the process is designed. It's looking at where we learn to feel these
Nice.
emotions, and that's in the past. And that's what it is. We have, unfortunately, we learn through experiences. And for a lot of people, those experiences aren't positive. Now, for people listening to this or watching this and thinking, oh, well, I wouldn't want to dive into that. For a lot of people, the memories and recalls, which are unconscious, are not where they had the experience, but they've observed the experience.
That's
Like
interesting.
older brother doing something or parents having an argument and they're feeling the fear. And in the adult self, they start to think, oh my God, this is so silly. But it makes sense. Do you see what I mean? So it's not always dark and fearful or traumatic. It's actually our younger self was in a position as an observer, but has had that imprint, emotional imprint, where we've learned to feel the feeling. And then
That's
some, yeah. And then
that's
something
given me
present is
goosebumps.
triggering it. Yeah.
That
That,
gave me goosebumps. That's so interesting that you can, it doesn't have to happen to you. You
no.
can witness it.
Yeah.
You can witness it and take it on as a
100%.
belief.
Yeah. So I had motorway driving anxiety.
Right.
uh, about because I'm fine in the city. I love being in the car, love driving, into that. But on the motorway, out of nowhere, like a switch, the sweating, the heart, the breathing, and I sat with it, and it was the 8-year-old me in the back of the car, feeling into my parents and their driving anxiety.
Right.
It's just an innocent 8-year-old sat there, but felt it and was getting triggered, switched on unconsciously on the motorway.
Yeah.
Um, so and completely that as the observer.
I had somebody once that had a problem with self-trust, or they had a difficulty with self-trust. And when we sort of explored it, it came down to when they were younger, their
Yeah.
parents would argue. And when she would say, Mom, Dad, what are you arguing about? They'd say, We're not arguing.
There you go.
So what she learned in that time was
Yeah.
that she can't trust her own judgment.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah, and it's like that's interesting. I love the way you framed that. So with that anxiety, it might not even really belong to you in some ways.
Yes,
It might be something
exactly. Yeah.
like that emotional baggage that you've picked up somewhere along the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And for a lot of people, their present anxious feelings about, let's say, doing a presentation at work in front of 6 people that they're feeling overwhelmed with, and especially if they don't understand where it's come from, does normally go back to an experience as a teenager of being embarrassed speaking or something like that. Because you can have a lot of confident people where it just happens and they're like, what is this feeling? But it's It's because it's somewhere in their unconscious.
You know what I'm wondering now, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is that, I mentioned to you, like, whenever I read the introductions in the podcast
Yeah.
about the guest, that I somehow start to stutter and stumble on my words. And I remember as a kid when I hated it when the
Oh,
teacher would say, stand up and read
oh,
this section of a
yeah.
book. And I hated it. So that's probably where it comes from.
There you go.
Turning into a therapy session, I'll owe you money.
I was literally going to say to you, I'll send you my invoice after this, but you're already on the vibe. There you go.
No, that's really fascinating. I
Mm,
love that. I really do. I'll have to look into that a bit more.
mm.
So switching gears a little bit, I spoke to you about phobias before we
Yes.
pressed record. I know it's something that you've worked with. What's the best piece of perspective you could offer someone who struggles with a fear or phobia?
To have help. Like, honestly, it all comes back to having help, having professional help. And again, my go-to is the eye movement therapy, because it's not just talking about it, it's really reducing the feeling down.
Mm.
With a fear or phobia, again, there's normally experiences that have happened where the person has felt increased emotion. And if that's fear, or if it's something that it develops into a phobia, it's normally fear of something. On that note, the experiences could have been mental. So when we think of things that make us feel scared, we're changing our emotional state, right?
Right.
So we're changing how we feel. So actually, the fear could be strengthened through our thoughts. And somebody might be listening or watching going, but I haven't had that many experiences. But you might have thought it through so many times and ramped up that feeling in the nervous system, then it's become encoded into that. So fears are quite easy to deal with using that process. But a lot of things that are general, like general terms, as in fear of flying or fear of water, that's what people will present. It's never really that. It's never the fear of flying. It's normally the fear of crashing or the fear of dying. So again, you get specific. It's not the fear of water for some people, and it's all individual once you unpack it. It's the fear of being out of control,
Yeah.
or the fear of drowning, things like that. And this is what I see a lot of the time with presented fears around something. Once you get into it, it's not the fear, it's what's underneath it. So
Mm.
again, easier to manage, easier to process and sort.
That's so fascinating, because I found that with alcohol, but actually my addiction to alcohol had nothing to do with alcohol.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, there you
No,
go.
nothing to do with alcohol. It had everything to do with a feeling of comfort and safety
Right.
and
Yeah.
exploring. Again, it's a contradiction, but I used to drink to connect with my emotions and escape my emotions
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Yes.
And these contradictions can happen in life. They can.
Yeah.
But I mean, I witnessed a phobia in motion. Is my wife's scared of spiders, and a
Right.
spider ran across the floor, and she screamed, and my kids automatically jumped off the floor. And I was
Right.
like, "You've literally just taught them to be scared of spiders."
Yeah.
You know?
So that would be the question. What are you scared of with the
Mm,
spider? That it's going to touch you, that
mm.
it's going to bite you, that it's so do you see when like you
Yeah,
get
yeah,
specific into it?
yeah. I mean, I'm not scared of spiders, but it's just interesting because when you rationalize it, when you look at it, to me, I see it so plainly. I see it as this was this little spider. It's probably more scared of you
Yeah.
than you are of it. But my wife is literally like, it's real as well. Like I see it, like she whatever she thinks, she believes it, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, that's all very fascinating. I love the idea is I heard this analogy once. I've said it many times on the podcast. Apologies to people who've heard me say it lots of times, but there's this analogy about when you get stung by a stinging nettle leaf, that the antidote to the sting is within the leaf, but no one's brave
Mm.
enough to scrunch up the leaf and try it. And I think that is, in essence, what we're saying is that usually the remedy, the antidote, the solution to the problem is usually found within the problem. But
Yes.
we avoid
Yes.
it. We avoid it because it scares us. We don't want to look at it. It's uncomfortable. It's overwhelming, whatever it is. But it's there, and it's very difficult to want to explore it. If something really awful has happened and you go to a therapy session and you feel like you've got to talk about it, you don't really want to do that. You
Mm.
know, if
Mm.
you want to make difficult decisions like end a friendship, don't want to do that. You need
Mm.
to leave a job you've been in for 30 years. Don't
Mm.
want to do that. A relationship, a romantic
Yeah.
one, don't want to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All of these things are really hard. and we will use up time in our life avoiding those difficult things, not realizing that, yes, we will have a difficult experience. It will be hard to end a friendship, to leave a job, to do whatever. But on the other side of that, over time, after some time, you will feel a freedom that you didn't have before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the reward.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's why you do the work. That's why you do
Yeah.
it. You know, I feel a lot of people say a lot of things about therapy, coaching, and all sorts of things. And, you know, a lot of that could be a bad coach, a bad therapist, I don't know.
Right.
But at times, quite often, it's there. If they frame it and they create a narrative that allows them to buy into the fact that I'm okay, therapy is not for me. Like, therapy doesn't work. It's like, it does. It
does,
does
exactly.
if you do it. But if you turn up and you resist it, it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
So just moving on to the last thing, before we end this absolutely wonderful conversation, is there anything that you'd like to pass along to people that could help them with their self-development?
What would I like to pass along? I think you just have to keep going, and in a way that eventually it becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. All of these tools that we learn, all of the things that we read, all of the processes that are continually developed, it would be a different world. It would be a different experience if all of this knowledge we had now was passed on in schools, right? Because then we would grow up with these tools, with these resources. We wouldn't have to do it as we have had to do it as adults in our own time. Right. So it's just we've just educated ourselves. So that's why I would say keep going, because really you're educating yourself for life. And you know, people like doing this, having a podcast to share helps other people, writing books helps other people. You know, doing the social media, we are here to help other people. We're sharing awareness. And for me, it's all about educating, trying to educate people about what to do, how to do things, and what options are available. And things I really think would be different for a lot of people if they'd had that awareness from a younger age.
Yeah, because, you know, you leave it 10 years, 20
Yeah.
years, and you've got 10, 20 years more stuff to sift through, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so yeah, and you know, I'm a parent, and you know, I feel like I try my hardest to pass down what I've learned to my
Yeah.
kids. I am honest with them to a point. You know, I do talk about my relationship with alcohol and why it had to change, because quite sweetly, my sons will say, well, I never noticed, Dad. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, well, I became really good at hiding it. But you remember when I didn't come to the beach that time? Or do you remember when I missed that party? Or do you remember this stuff that I'm ashamed about? I'll say that was because I was too hungover, babe. You know?
But it's that honesty is part of the teaching and the learning, right?
Yeah.
And not only the honesty of the examples, but the truth is, because we all do it, we're good at hiding things.
Yeah.
And when it's a problem, or whether it's a mental, emotional challenge, people get good at hiding things. So, you know, the fact that you can share that with your own children, it's there to enlighten them.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that, yeah, I do. You know, like I have that own personal shame that I work on all the time, and I have to constantly catch myself when I go off down them little rabbit holes with it, you know, especially if I'm tired or hungry or getting irritated by this guy eating or something. Something like that, you know, but yeah, we try our best. But I mean, just before we finished, what's next for you and where can people find you? Because I'm sure they'll want to learn more about you.
So my main kind of platform is Instagram, Coach Kamran Bedi, my website, kamranbedi.com, or my training institution, mindbodymethod.co.uk. Next for me is just to keep doing what I'm doing with the people that come to me for sessions, the people that I'm working with, and that I really feel content with. That what is next for me is just to keep doing it. Because there has been the past where it's this project needs to be finished or that thing needs to be done. And the good thing is that at the moment, it's just keep doing the work. And I feel comfortable in that.
Yeah, and you seem like somebody that's got even more to give. I mean, just I feel like you should just quickly plug your book before you go.
The Anxiety Antidote, absolutely. Yeah, lots of tools, lots of techniques in there, lots of awareness and understanding about what anxiety is beneath the umbrella term, the physical side, the mental side, and tools that you can use. Literally follow the steps in the book to feel less anxious.
I love it, mate. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I could do it for hours
Likewise.
and hours and
Yeah.
hours, but I'm sure that people would get frustrated. My editing team, for example.
Thank you so much for today. I've really enjoyed it.
No, me too. Thank you so much.